sometimes a musician is a larger-than-life personality, and sometimes a musician is a larger-than-life person. The difference between those two things might seem negligible, but I assure you it is not. His garage rock eminence, King Khan, is a prime example of that. Crazy onstage antics, bizarre attire, head-scratching collaborations, all those things exemplify his status as a larger-than-life personality. But once you dig past the artifice, you start to see that Arish Khan, which is his given name, is just as out there in his everyday life, but in a very different way. I mean, he's friends with director Alejandro Jodorowsky. And he told me he wants to start a Magma cult during this interview at Bonnaroo from a while back. So yeah, pretty out there. And you might think that makes him crazy or something, but it's his openness to the world and his embrace of off-kilter spiritualism that makes him such a kind, genuine, loving, and centered person. Now, that might not sound like the guy who shoved his naked rear end in Lindsay Lohan's face during a show, but see, that's the difference between personality and person. That's also the beauty of life's non-binary, paradoxical nature. It doesn't have to make sense to make sense. And sometimes when you see it up close, it just clicks, like it did for me when I talked to King Khan.
I just met the guy who directed Fight for Your Right to Party by the Beastie Boys.
Here?
Yeah, he's a photographer here, and he's a fan of mine. And he was offering me to drive me around in his golf cart. And it turned out he was Rick Rubin's roommate back in the day.
So that's how that happened.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
That's so weird.
Yeah.
So
and, he used to hang out with Bad Brains and Run DMC and everything. I was like, you know what? I often think that if you do the right things with your life, you create some kind of magnetism that attracts beautiful, incredible people to you, and I'm living proof that a lot of my greatest heroes I've got to meet and be a part of their lives and stuff, and yeah.
It's all because you've done something right.
It's all because I decided to take a lot of acid when I was a kid and run away from home and find my chosen family and then travel the whole world with music.
And that's why today you met Hannibal Buress, Craig Robinson, and the guy that directed
whose
Fight for Your Right to
name
Party.
is Adam, and it rhymes with Rick Rubin. Adam Dubin.
Is that true?
Roommate of Rick Rubin.
Rubin and Dubin?
Rubin and Dubin.
So they were never...
I've been Dubin all my life.
They were never a rap duo, though, because with names like... I feel like...
No, they were strictly production.
Okay. That's too bad.
But it's badass.
No, it is, though. It's crazy.
That seriously, that video changed my life when I was a kid. That album actually,
That was one of the records.
Well, hell yeah.
What?
Yeah.
How old were you when that came out?
I guess I must have been... Oh, God. I don't even know when did License to Ill come out. It's like... I was born in 1977.
Okay.
So I was probably like a wee little itty bitty lad.
Yeah, so you were just the perfect age for a subversive record like
hell
that.
Yeah. I mean, Run DMC and Prince, actually, and break dance movies. That's what kind of set my soul on fire when I was a kid.
Breakin' 2, the
In
Electric
fact,
Boogaloo?
Yes, Breakin' especially because Ice-T was on that, Restless. And I remember watching that movie when I was a kid, and I had the cardboard out, and and it was funny because my parents would have the dinner parties for Indian families, and we would be in the basement, and playing break-in, and trying to break dance. And I remember actually from the movie, remember they had those punk wristbands, and they used to scratch with it, and I would try that with my record player. With absolutely no success.
It didn't work.
Because it's not, I don't think you're supposed to do it with them.
Yeah.
But I love that punk was, a part of that movement too, and I had this really incredible experience once. I was playing in Toronto with Mark Sultan with the King Kong Barbecue Show, who are now called Bad News Boys, by the way. We changed our name. But
is that true?
It's true, yeah.
Okay.
And we were playing in Toronto at this festival, and Fab Five Freddy was there at our show, and he was freaking out. And the organizer of this festival brought him to the show, and then after the show, Fab Five Freddy invited me to a press conference with him and Jizza from the Wu-Tang. And he introduced me to Jizza, and then the three of us were drinking Caesars and laughing, and that's how the association with Jizza happened. And he asked me to come over to his hotel room, and we were like, I brought a guitar, and we were like freestyling, and I was playing, some rock and roll. And then next thing you know, I got to play guitar for Jizza for like a couple of shows.
I got King Khan in the house with me today.
Here's a little bit of that collaboration with Jizza he's talking about. Now, the sound quality might not be the best, but it's still worth hearing.
Y'all ready to go into a chamber right now? Real loud. We're going to go into a chamber. It's called the fourth chamber. So when this come on, y'all get crazy, all right? Y'all ready to do this?
Yeah, see, King Khan worked with Jizza, which is one of those, head-scratching collaborations I mentioned earlier. But I guess that's just what happens when you seem to know everybody. So it shouldn't be the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Two.
It should be the 6 degrees of King
Fab
Khan.
Five Freddy.
No, of you. Because it sounds like you know or have met everyone
what?
in the entire world.
I don't like to brag about. Or
now I feel like I matter because I met you today.
Well, thank you. I mean, that's how I like to all my fans to feel, when we play shows. I mean, it's true because it's like a lot of bands don't even think about the fact that people are watching them and are actually internalizing what they produce. So many people are so caught up with their own image and their own bullshit. Like, for example, all these people, I tell everybody that I'm married. I'm happily married for like, since 1999. So it's like almost 15 years. Yeah. I got 2 beautiful daughters. I'm very proud of that. And when I say it on stage, it's like I get reactions like, I can't believe that you admit that you're married. And it's like, man, that's because I make music that's truthful, and that's the big difference between a lot of music that's out there. My big mentor was the Mighty Hannibal, from Atlanta, Georgia, and he passed away just recently, and he never got any of the justice that he deserved because he spoke his mind. And in like 1963, he released a song, Hymn Number 5, which was an anti-Vietnam protest song, hidden in a gospel tune.
I wrote my baby from Vietnam, and this is what I said.
As soon as you start doing that, at that age, you're subversive, and then you're shunned, there was a huge counter-revolution. The American government was counter-revolution, and there's all these, new facts, like J. Edgar Hoover was the most perverted Nazi ever, and he hunted the most poor, innocent black children and black people and every kind of people, actually. America has a very sordid history, and there's a lot of new things that are coming to light. In fact, I just did a soundtrack for a documentary that's going to come out next year called The Invaders.
I heard about that, yeah.
Yeah, and that's incredible. I can't even believe that I was invited to be a part of that whole family. But the director, who's an old friend of mine, he's from Memphis, Pritchard Thomas Smith, and he actually wanted to reveal the story of the invaders, and it was something that everyone that he asked about the invaders, to find them and to get them to tell their tale, were that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But because he's such a magical, spiritual human being, he was able to get the whole story and set the story straight. Because it's I won't get into too many details because it's coming out next year. But
yeah, you want people to watch the movie after they hear this.
Yeah, because if I start, then I'll just start. You don't want any spoilers right now. But I'll tell you one thing though, that movie is going to be one of the most important films that has ever been made in America. Craig Brewer is producing it, and we're trying to get Samuel Jackson to be the voice, the narrator. So this movie is gonna. But I don't want to get into it.
no, but I guess it's one of those things, like, just knowing that you're a pretty well-connected guy, but even just in the 5 minutes that we've been sitting here, hearing these stories of how you met these people, how you became involved in these projects, it's amazing. And one of the things that, like, I love about you as a person, in addition to being a musician, is that I can tell that you really care about things.
I do, of
and
course.
People and stuff.
What?
You know
I'll
what
tell
I mean?
you. I'll tell you one of the biggest things that the reason that is that.
What's the reason? Well, you have to wait a few minutes to find out. Yeah, I'm keeping you in suspense, but it's worth it. Because right this second, I've got a track recorded live at KEXP in Seattle from King Khan and the Barbecue Show. It's Alone Again on the guest list.
It goes like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's the King Khan and Barbecue Show with a live rendition of Alone Again, recorded by our friends at KEXP in Seattle. After the break, you'll find out the reason why King Khan cares so much. You'll also learn which band makes graphic designer Aaron Draplin squirm. And we'll pay tribute to one of the most influential musicians in the history of rock and roll, regardless of who might disagree. It's the guest list.
Rock on.
Yes, hello, rock on.
I'm Sean Cannon. It's the guest list. Let's go ahead and jump back into my conversation with garage rock revivalist King Khan, whose nihilistic onstage antics might seem to belie his tender demeanor just a little bit. I can tell that you really care about things.
I do, of
and
course.
People and
you know
stuff.
What?
You know
I'll
what
tell
I mean?
you. I'll tell you one of the biggest things that the reason that is that I was 22 when my first daughter was born, and my second one was born 2 years after that. And when you're at that age, it's a pretty tender age to procreate, especially if you're like a punk rock musician and have absolutely no idea of what you're really doing. But there's a lot of faith that you have to have in the unknown, and that's unfortunately, as the world gets more digital and more addicted to information, the unknown doesn't exist anymore. There is something about just sitting down and looking at the clouds, and or staring at the stars or listening to the rain, which unfortunately is being wiped out of people because they have these stupid little tablets that they're attached to, which they're addicted to, and they can't even have peace of mind because they're just looking for something stupid. So,
it's not even just that. It's like they're specifically doing their best to not think.
Right.
Which is, I'm
actually. Not thinking is what I'm talking about. Is this?
I mean, in a different way.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Not meditatively, because
right.
that is something else.
They're just getting distracted. They're using distractions to just, of course.
Because that's when you delve into individual
Right.
thoughts in a way that everything sort of parts, like the skies part and everything starts to make sense.
Meditation is the most important thing. And to be honest, it's like taking me years to even be able to try to meditate, because, I'm product of our modern world, and I have a very manic brain, but after a while it catches up to you, and I had a spiritual epiphany a few years ago where I realized that the essence of spirituality is basically based on magma. Magma is the fluid that's inside of the earth, but it's also the child of the sun, and that's trapped inside the earth and wants to get released and go back to mama. And essentially, we are 80% water and 20% magma. And in your spirit is in the same way. It's always trying to break through the surface and go up, And the ratio is what's very important to realize, that it's 80% water and 20% magma. And I know that I lived most of my life the other way around. There was 80% magma and 20% water. And then that started to really f*** me up, And I almost lost my life. You get caught up in a lot of different things, a lot of distractions, but I don't regret any of them, but when you start to realize that you're burning up, then I saw a lot of my friends just burn up and die, and luckily, because of my family and starting my family so early, I was surrounded by this water, this love energy that made me realize the balance. And so, yeah, I would like to start a cult, a magma cult, one day.
Well, your stage name already, King Khan. I feel like you could start a cult. No one would question that. Is that my imagination? I feel like that would probably be okay.
I'd like to. I think. My biggest heroes, for example. Especially for the past 10 years, one of them is Alejandro Jodorowsky, the filmmaker who did The Holy Mountain and El Topo and stuff. And when I discovered his films, I was probably like 20 years old, and they made such a deep impact in my brain that I honestly, it's one of those things that when you try it, it affects everything you do afterwards. Subconsciously and consciously.
You'll hear more about how Alejandro Jodorowsky has affected King Khan's life in just a few, but first, here's another cut from the King Khan and Barbecue show, recorded live at KEXP in Seattle. From the record Bad News Boys, which they ultimately didn't have to change their name to. It's Illuminations.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3. The light in my job came from spot deep within you. Could you choose to burn out, or just let the flames consume you? Wrap your head around the thought, let it guide your every movement. Now return to your bell and leave the rest beneath you. Illuminations, illuminations, illuminations. Don't let them leave you behind.
It's Illuminations from the King Khan and Barbecue Show, recorded live by our friends at KEXP. Now let's get back into my conversation with King Khan as he talks more about his experiences with filmmaker and spiritualist Alejandro Jodorowsky.
I was really lucky. I mean, actually, I wouldn't say luck. I mean, I think that I got invited by him to join his spiritual warriors, and and I mean, he's 84 years old, but he invited me to his house, and it's really funny because I brought Cole from the Black Lips there too, because Cole is my spiritual son, and Jodorowsky's kind of like my spiritual father, and so we had a little family powwow, and I've been in touch with him ever since, and just what's incredible about him is that he is a modern day wizard. You don't think that wizards exist, but they are, and what wizards are basically just spiritual healers who have spent the time enough to check out all of the different spiritualities and pick out the best morsels of spirit. You take off your clothes. As I say this, a strange French man has just come in here and started to moon us.
Those are some pretty
he plays
pasty cheeks.
Pasty cheeks with paisley underwear on top. So it's pasty paisley. It's a
good look. I don't know
Sadly,
why you're putting
this is
shorts
only radio
on.
because if you could see what's happening here. This is Big Fred,
Big Fred,
my baritone sax player.
I gotcha.
He has the longest fingers in France.
Let's see him. Those are long enough. They're long enough to get the job done.
They're long enough to make him a legend.
I believe that. In many different circles for many different reasons.
I like that you sexualize everything like I do. People complain about that. Well, only annoying people complain about it.
But that's one of the things too that is intriguing to me about you is you're talking about this, but also we're making jokes about sexualizing everything.
Oh man,
when you hear
it's part of life.
Well, that's the thing. It's like when I hear your music, and the first time I heard your music years and years ago, it's so immediate and so almost nihilistic. Sometimes,
That's interesting you say that. 'Cause, I mean, I've never thought of it really that nihilistic, but
I don't mean thematically, but it's just like when you feel that energy and you feel that sort of.
That's true. I mean,
freedom to just go full throttle. Like there's something that feels nihilistic about that, and that's what I find interesting.
Right,
is
okay.
that you seem to be like the polar opposite of that. You're instead incredibly thoughtful and sometimes pensive. It seems like.
Yeah,
and that's nothing like what I would think your music would be like. Does that make sense?
No, I totally understand what you're saying. I mean, on stage, for example, I like to channel energy, and I think that's like. I'm not talking any hippie hippie mumbo jumbo, but actually I'm talking more about mojo, and I mean, you see, like the essence of like human spirit, right? For example, I just recently learned about this thing which really intrigued me, was that in Africa, the name that Africans have for voodoo, the voodoo religion or juju, is fetish. Right, and so like imagine in Africa way back when churches started like taking over all these places, then suddenly they called their own religion fetish, and even in Sicily, if you go to Sicily, Italy right now, and you show an old Italian lady like a piece of voodoo sculpture or something, she'll call it fetiche. Right, fetish. And like think about what the principles of fetish are. I mean, I live in the land of fetish, in Germany, and what's beautiful about fetish is it's a secret thing, it's like, I mean, and it's also basically turning pain and suffering into pleasure and power, and that's the ultimate difference between these other stupid organized religions, who have absolutely no idea, they just suffer and suffer and suffer. But if you want to really follow your true path, you have to enjoy the suffering and enjoy the pain and make it a part of your spirituality, And once you do that, then you have all bases covered. Then you can laugh, Then you're the ultimate fool, You can laugh. You can sit at the table of the king, make fun of him, eat his food, give him the finger, go outside, and then hang out with some homeless people
Right.
who are also incredibly funny.
No, I think that's very fair, and I'm a big fan of Kierkegaard and early
Cool.
existentialists.
I've never read any of that.
So it's a very different way of saying almost the exact same thing that you're saying.
Yeah, well, it's totally true. I mean, it's a deep philosophical way of living, but it's involving the most pleasure, and like you know, I did an interview in Hungary just recently with this nervous little 17-year-old kid. He was a big fan, and he's Hungarian. He couldn't speak English very well, but he looked like Bill Murray, like in Caddyshack. There's nothing that in this kid that you couldn't just, your heart just kind of broke when he was talking. He was really nervous and sweaty and I'm really happy to meet you. And then as I was telling him about philosophy stuff that I was thinking about, then he told me that he's like, oh, I interviewed Clive Barker and you remind me of Clive Barker. And I was like, really? Why? He's like, oh, because I asked Clive Barker, where does he get all these monster images? Where does he get these things? And Clive Barker basically just told him, he's like, oh, I hang out in gay clubs and I see some really nasty sexual acts in front of me, and then suddenly I dream of monsters.
I could see that being the case.
Totally, yeah.
Especially if you go to the right clubs. Oh, man, seeing some of the things now, knowing that, having seen some of the things that Clive Barker has done in the past, I'm terrified.
Don't be. You know what?
No, I'm just terrified of what he's seen that would inspire those things.
You know what? I've seen those things, and what's amazing about those things is that, that's the problem with a lot of people, is that they're so scared, and fear is the thing that is the worst. Fear is what makes the mouse stink and the eagle smell it and eat it. And fear is what makes someone who gets told they have cancer, it lets the cancer win.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I've seen many cases of friends of mine. I've been involved in a lot of healing rituals for people who have suffered from these kind of things and who have fought it because of their willpower and their mind. You can destroy cancer if you think about it hard enough. Or it's like, as soon as you start being scared, and then to take it into the disco. I mean, I've been to these kind of crazy S&M dungeon kind of places in Berlin, which is legendary for these kind of things. And of course, there's the cliche of being very scared and stuff. But when you actually go there, you know what it is. It's like your dentist secretary is wearing a latex mask, and she's getting her kicks, on the weekend. It's like Weekend Warriors. You know what I mean? There's nothing scary at all about it. People are afraid of you're not going to get raped if you go to these kind of things. It's what you're going to see is some people having a good time, and who are completely free. And I think essentially for me, even as a child, that was all I wanted to be completely free. And my parents in a strange way forced me to do that, because my father took a path that was different from any other Indian professor. He started abusing cocaine, and he was turned into a monster in front of my eyes and made me run away from home. And I've since then made peace with my father and stuff, but for several years I would never talk to him, and that's also not a good position you want to be in. You want to face those demons, and just like you want to face, that bald guy. You'd rather look him in the eye and be like, hey, what's up, man? Instead of maybe, I don't know, running away. And
I guess that's the real takeaway from my interview with King Khan. Don't run away from the guy who's doing the weird naked thing that you can't actually talk about on the radio. Or something like that. Now, that's all of my conversation for today with Arish King Khan, but here's one last live cut from our friends at KEXP in Seattle. It's the King Khan and Barbecue Show with Kiss My Sister's Fists.
Ready? It's up close and personal. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Watch and wait, she's launched her bait. I hope for your sake she ain't hungry. Take some time while you walk this line to maybe change your mind, cause she's so serious. Well, I hope you're an organ donor, cause she won't take no prisoners. Now's the time for a last goodbye before this ain't serious. Take some time while you walk. There's time to baby change your mind 'cause she's so envious. Well, I hope you're an organ donor 'cause she won't take no prisoners. Now's the time for a last goodbye before she comes to take your life. Kiss my sister's fist. Kiss my sister's fist. Kiss my sister's fist. Kiss my sister. The game you play while you're gone away, make it hard to say that this ain't serious. Take some time while you walk, 'cause life you maybe change your mind and make you suffer. Well, I hope you're an organ donor 'cause she won't take no prisoners. Now's the time for a last goodbye before she comes to take your life. Kiss my sister's face. Kiss my sister's face. Kiss my sister's face. Kiss my sister's face. All right.
I wanted to say the other word, but
It's the King Khan and Barbecue Show with Kiss My Sister's Fists, live from our friends at KEXP in Seattle. Oh, by the way, King Khan's latest project is called Let Me Hang You. It's a record built around recordings of William S. Burroughs reading some of the filthiest parts of his book, Naked Lunch. Now, I didn't include it in the show today because, well, I didn't want to get fined by the FCC, but if you're not easily offended, or if you are for that matter, I recommend giving it a listen.